Morning, how are we? Or afternoon, or evening, whatever. We're sitting here looking at an Anvil 5 with solid rocket boosters, giving some amount of DV that I'm not entirely sure. You may notice that we are not connected to the MUN. The reason behind this is because I binned all the MUN probes because I wasn't happy about the way that they were communicating to the Kerbal planets, and also when things were landing on the MUN, there was several points where all three probes are very close to each other around one side of the MUN. They seem to be doing that. As I fast forwarded, they seem to be staying together. Perhaps they were scared of the MUN or something. So what we've done is to, using the stupid amount of delta V that the probes had, I've ripped them out, or rather forcibly landed them upon the on the moon. I've also removed Geosat 4 and 5 that were polar, geostationary. Can it be geostationary when in polar orbit? Anyway, I ripped those out as well because I felt they weren't needed. They're only really needed if I was going to end up flying probes on at the polar, or at the north and south poles. So what we have here is Anvil 5 with my patented 3-probe launching device. The probes are somewhat modified though. I've cut down the dishes down to one dish and one omnidirectional beacon. The omnidirectional antennas will reach down to the MUN themselves when I set them in a reasonable orbit, as long as I'm not too far out. And the dishes will point back towards Kerbal, to give us a very nice and very organised link back to Kerbal. So we'll start fast forwarding, make it 2 times. I can't, with my video software, I can't fast forward it anymore. But what we may do is cut chunks of it out. Gravity turn, all exciting. Drop the solid rocket boosters. Look at how wonderful this is. Anvil 5. Very good rocket set. Probably the same as KW. I have KW, but I haven't particularly used it that much. So we'll get us into, I don't know what the orbit was, I think it was 100 and something kilometres I eventually decided on. I can't quite see, the video quality is a bit iffy for me because I haven't fully rendered it yet. But we'll get up to 100k, presumably that'll be my normal distance. The only problem with this Anvil 5 is, because it's quite a heavy rocket, I'm still on the first stage, it really doesn't turn in space, so I've strapped on some poorly positioned retro boosters, retro rockety things. They should have been moved 45 degrees around, but heck, there we go. The rocket comes built in, the Anvil 5s come with a small amount of monopropellant anyway, so there's no extra cost, there's no extra modification to use to strap on the retro rockets, and away you go. Of course this is unmanned, so we have a dish out. I also have a Communitron 16, one on each side of the rocket. You can just see it just above the dish there to give remote control. We're still talking to mission control, but eventually when we get around the other side, a bit too far, come back, we will be using the dish to talk to MUN probes. 6, oh, steady boy. Circularize the orbit. I should have really dropped the cows before I circularized the orbit, because that's yet more stuff in space. There we go. Oh, that really gets me. That always does. I always enjoy that. So there we go. My patented 4,500 delta V per probe. Pretty much get you anywhere once I've got it in orbit. But I tend to use fly them around as a single unit with the rocket motor under the tri-connector. It just means for less launches, less time in space. So we'll stick out a probe, we'll connect it to something, we'll pick it up the Communitron 32s on the probes. So now we'll deorbit the main stage, just enough delta V to do that. Slightly less shrapnel in space, although you notice the connector connecting the two is now floating around space, so I obviously picked the wrong ones. That was nice. Yet more things for me to fly into later on. One day I'll actually hit something. That'll be amusing. Probably not, because I'll probably be organising a flight out to some big planet somewhere. So now we try and intercept the moon. I'm not very good at this. I tend not to plan it. I just tend to move things around until it looks like a good interception, with something along the lines of a reasonably close periapsis. I know there are ways to do it. You know, to get them on at 12 o'clock, and I think it's make a manoeuvre node at 4 o'clock or 5 o'clock or something. But you know, just keep moving stuff around until it works. It gets a lot different when you're going out to some of the further distances, such as any other planet really. You have to start thinking about these things, start planning them. MegJeb comes in very useful for that. It'll create a manoeuvre node hundreds of days in the future. You then use Kerbal Alarm Clock to remember that node position and warn you a day or two before the node takes effect, before the node comes into, you know, before your the window, so that you can plan these things in advance. I did it once, and I had rockets planned for, I don't know, I think it was Dres and Joule and all sorts of things, and they all came up so close to each other. Plus I was trying to get about 3 rockets out to Duna. I think I eventually gave up and scrapped the idea. Now, whilst I've been to Duna, I haven't got any videos on it, and whilst I have been to Duna, I did it over about 4 launches, but I did it 4 launches almost a year apart. It's about 170 days, I think, roughly, but each window of opportunity. Me not planning ahead and thinking about this, what I should have done was to make one very large rocket in Kerbal orbit and throw the whole lot out there. Now, I've done it once with the MUN. I did a lander, a Kethane miner, a rover, plus a ton of fuel and all that stuff, and it all worked, and it really did lag out the system. I don't know what the frame rates were, probably 4 or 5 now in my luck. Whilst it did work, it was an awful lot of planning. By the time I got to the MUN and got in orbit, I was kind of a bit jaded. I won't say tired, because I did it over a week, but I was kind of somewhat jaded to the whole idea of getting out there. So we'll, as you can see, we're making our burn. The rocket we're using is not the most powerful one, so it's quite a long burn. I think, if I remember rightly, it was about 4 minutes. In my head, I estimated something like 2, so I burnt it somewhat late. But then again, it's, you know, we will probably end up doing correction. Obviously, this is the audio is recorded after the fact. Oh, that's how you do it, isn't it? Yeah, you get into 100k equatorial orbit, and you watch for the MUN to appear just above the horizon. Then you light the blue. Then you burn retrograde, prograde, bloody idiot, blathering idiot. If you're on an easterly orbit. Never actually tried that. One of these days I might just do it without manoeuvre node and see what happens. Chances are I'm going to end up hoping that Minmus is further out and it's going to catch me, because I can guarantee I won't hit the MUN. Would be nice. So what we're going to do here, we're going to get to the MUN. We're going to drop 3 probes in kind of a random orbit. Previously they were all at roughly the same orbiting at the same distance on a circular orbit, and it meant that all the probes were orbiting very close to each other, even though one was equatorial, one was polar, and one was somewhere in between. They all tended to stay on one side of the MUN to each other, which was fine. But if I decided I wanted to go and land on the left-hand side, for want of a better name, and they were all on the right-hand side, I either had to wait or I had to stick a Kerbal in it. And I have not launched in this save. I have not yet launched a Kerbal in space. Yet. One day. So we shove on the alarm clock just for the safety to tell me when I get in the SOI. I'm not sure on this flickering. It's starting to do, my game is starting to do this for me. Whether I've got a solid interception or not. So I have a bit of a faff around trying to get a closer periapsis, but I think if I remember rightly, I have to think about it. I think this is gonna get this is getting crazy. I'm just going to be burning fuel for the sake of it when I already have an interception. So we'll stay with the interception we've got, which is, as you can see, pretty poor. There was a comment made to me. Can't remember where I was. I had to nip away from the mic for a couple of seconds there. So we'll start connecting the probes up to talk to. Probe 1 is going to talk to the Kerbal probe 1, probe 2, and so on. Takes up one dish. The local communications will be done by omnidirectional beacons, which have got more than enough range. All nice and sensible. The orbits will be pretty much random. I won't try and circularize them particularly. As long as they're within range of each other, they won't be circularized. They'll be at different orbital heights so that they all go at slightly different speeds. So that hopefully there'll be less, well, not hopefully, but there should be less chance of all the probes hiding over one side of the mun when I'm trying to land. You will notice I'm flying this thing by hand. I have a habit of not doing that. I tend to use MechJeb, my theory being that in real life, pilots and space travel is all pretty much done by computer anyway. Even Apollo 11, apart from the final landing, if my knowledge is correct, apart from the final landing was done pretty much by computer. Very basic computer, but it was there were no touchscreens or anything like that. But it was still done by hand. Still done by computer. Sorry, the final landing was done by hand. So we'll burn for circularize the orbit before I start dropping probes. The only issue with the method I'm using at the moment is I leave a little bit of debris flying in space, which is the pushing motor and the tri-connector. Not a major issue, but it adds to more debris. I'm sure I want for a circular orbit here. Here's me looking at it thinking, what the... Oh no, we deleted it. We obviously didn't like that. We're having a faff around. I tend to second guess myself. Oh, look at this. Why am I doing this? Oh, yeah. Obviously, as I said, I'm flying this by hand. Normally you use MechJeb because of, it's a lot easier. I'm a programmer by nature and programmer by trade, so it tends to come a lot easier. Somebody made a comment in a previous video. I can't remember his name. I apologise, but the comment was made that I rely on MechJeb too much, which is true. But the only thing that I do by hand is landings on Mun. I think that is beautiful the way that drops out. Oh, no dishes out, no solar panels out. There we go. Good man. So I'm flying this with MechJeb, which generated a rather ropey orbit. I obviously didn't burn correctly when I did the prograde burn away from Kerbal, so I've ended up in a somewhat iffy orbit. It's certainly not what I would hope to get. So I'm having to expend fuel, as you can see, to get into an orbit which is acceptable for this probe. But then again, one probe's going to be semi-polar, one of them's only going to be semi-equatorial, and the other one's going to be wherever where there's a big hole. So I guess it doesn't really matter. But then if I was landing Kerbals on the moon using an Apollo 11 style lander, I'd probably have very little fuel. Getting in that polar or semi-polar orbit, he could probably ruin the mission for me. Plus, getting back from that kind of orbit makes life a lot more awkward. It also means you burn more fuel. So, as a reminder for myself next time is to be a little bit more careful when I'm trying to sort myself out, or at least correct once I'm on the way from Kerbal. I didn't do that. I didn't really think about that. That's, as the point was made, that's one of the negatives behind using MechJeb, because MechJeb is so accurate, or compared to me, it's extremely accurate. I can tend to make little mess ups like that. So I'm kind of watching this video thinking, what are we doing? I can see something like 50 minutes left on the clock. To try to circularize the orbit a little bit more, but we're sort of sitting here doing nothing. Good old chatterer in the background. The one thing I do miss is chatterer when you've got Kerbals in the spaceships, because they talk to each other, which I think is highly amusing, especially when you have them talk in Russian. You can add extra sounds and chatter, so with a bit of know-how where to get the sound files, you can download real world communications, which is quite fun. Doesn't work. So you can pretty much see what we're doing. We're dropping probes. We're trying to find an engine, probably, because I have the habit of not turning the engines on, which is amusing until I realise that I'm about to hit something. This is much better than the last expedition with the same style of ship that I made to Minmus, as you may or may not know. Hey, communications lost. I've lost communications with the planet Kerbal. That's a problem. So we'll save that maneuver node and try and work out why we're not connecting. Yes, I know, yes. The reason I'm not connecting is, even though I had a probe talking to, for instance, the geostationary satellite, whatever, I think I had to implicitly say to that Kerbal geostationary satellite to actually talk to directly, because the dishes, they're not omnidirectional. They have to be pointed, or effectively pointed at something. So whilst I'm getting these probes into a reasonable position, I think I got all my effectively I didn't concentrate enough on communication. So you can see me here trying to reset the Kerbal probes to look to the right thing. I'm probably trying to remember what I named them now. There we go. It's quite strange recording after the fact. I personally, I'd prefer to record during the actual mission. I just have this feeling that I have a very busy house. I have quite a lot of children. I have a very echoey house, which I'm trying to do something about at the moment. A bit of textiles, curtains, and something up to try and cut down the echo, which means that they can be across the other side of the house and sound can travel down corridors and the such like, and it's almost like they're my darling children. They're in the same room. So I can't really record when I'm playing KSP, unless I play KSP 11, 12 o'clock my time, which means the last thing I want to do is then go rendering videos, which can get very big, extremely big. Let alone the rendering. Rendering cuts down the size a lot, but the actual video before it's rendered gets stupidly big, and then my machine, whilst it doesn't bog down, well, it bogs down, it doesn't crash or anything, it just gets a bit slow when it's trying to load up the videos and cut any rubbish out. I'm also trying to get to the point where I don't have to edit videos. I have a habit of over-editing videos and over-editing sound, which tends to stilt the the way of doing things. I'm trying to think of the right word. My artistic style. Style? Yeah. Okay. So, third satellite, trying to do something, create a maneuver node, get it into some different sort of orbit. I think this is third or second satellite, I don't recall. The problem I was having, because I hadn't got the entire set of satellites in position and they weren't fully communicating with Kerbal, I was losing satellites, or losing communications with satellites around the back, which meant that I had to burn here a little bit prograde to increase my orbit, so I could actually talk to other Kerbal satellites. Obviously, if I'm orbiting too close to the Mun, I won't be able to talk to other Mun satellites because I won't have a line of sight. And technology-wise, we haven't got the ability to talk through solid objects yet. I don't know, I feel like I can hear every creak and boop and whop on my microphone. So, eventually we end up with MunSat1 talking to KerbalSat1, MunSat2 talking to KerbalSat2, MunSat3 talking to KerbalSat3, using their own dishes. As we can see, look at this, 3 satellites talking to from the Mun, talking to 3 satellites on Kerbal. The idea is I don't end up with black spots, and also I don't end up with points where I've lost my communications link. That is a perfect representation of what I'm trying to achieve. It won't last, but we'll just have a little burn. Oh, we've overrun that. Never mind. It doesn't really matter. We're not going for accuracy. Well, we're intentionally going for inaccuracy, I guess, because I don't want them all orbiting around the same location at the same time, at the same speed, and hiding different sides of the Mun. So we're pretty much done, to be honest, I reckon. Not much left. Have a little tidy up. Move things around. And there we go. Our next mission, or our next job. Eee, pretty. Oh yeah, double check that we're pointing at the right location. You'll see this throughout my videos where I end up looking and double checking and treble checking and is this working? We'll now do a little bit of a fast forward and just double check that it all talks to each other, but it's generally 2, if not 3. 2, 2, 2. Look at that. It seems to work really well. Now I fast forwarded this over about 6 hours and it didn't seem to have a problem. So our next mission is to try and get something landed on the Mun that I don't lose communications with and works perfectly well. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Talk to you soon.